She just wanted to embark, escape, breathe. But a forgotten passport was enough to turn the course of a journey, and perhaps of her own life. Sometimes life forces us to return, not to hold us back, but to show us what truly matters. She left home in search of answers and ended up finding questions she didn't even know she needed to ask. When the door opened, what she saw inside was not what she imagined. And that's when everything began to change. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. The taxi stopped in front of the two-story residence that Nellie had called home for 7 years. She hastily paid, grabbed her suitcase, and got out of the vehicle with a heavy heart. Each step toward the house brought back memories of a life that seemed to be slipping through her fingers. "Thank you," she said to the driver, who just nodded and drove away, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Nellie looked at the house. The curtains were closed, just as she had left them. Jason must have already left for work. In recent months he had been leaving earlier and coming back later, always with the same excuse. "The project is at a critical stage, love. I need to be there." She did not doubt his commitment to work. Jason had always been dedicated and responsible. It was one of the qualities that made her fall in love with him years ago. But now, that same dedication had turned into a wall between them. Nellie checked the clock. She had 2 hours until the flight. Enough time to get to the airport, check in, and maybe have a coffee before boarding. She had decided to visit her older sister, Clara, in another state. To take a break, as she explained to Jason the previous night, during a silent dinner where the only sounds were the clinking of cutlery against plates. Jason did not protest. He didn't ask when she would return. He just nodded and said, "Maybe it's good for you." For us, she thought, but didn't say. Now, standing on the sidewalk, Nellie questioned whether the trip would really make any difference, if the physical distance could heal the emotional distance that had grown between them. She looked one last time at the house and decided to move forward, at least for now. The airport was crowded, as expected on a Friday. Nellie patiently faced the check-in line, observing the faces around her, families gathered, couples holding hands, elderly people supporting each other. All those small gestures of affection that she and Jason had stopped sharing without even realizing when it started. When it was her turn, Nellie placed the suitcase on the conveyor belt and handed her documents to the attendant. "Passport, please," requested the staff member, with a polite smile. Nellie opened her purse and started to search. She rummaged through compartments, inside pockets, even places where she was sure she hadn't put the document. A chill ran down her spine. "Just a moment," she requested, while she emptied almost the entire contents of her purse onto the counter. The attendant waited, patient at first, but soon her gaze revealed a mix of pity and irritation. Behind Nellie, the line was growing, and murmurs of impatience were becoming audible. "Ma'am, if you can't find your passport, I'll have to attend to the next person in line," the attendant said, with a firm voice, yet maintaining politeness. Nellie felt her face burn. A sense of panic began to take hold of her. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to remember. And then, like a flash, she visualized the passport on the bedside table, where she had left it the night before after checking the expiration date. I forgot it at home," she admitted, feeling incredibly foolish. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience." The attendant nodded, already calling the next passenger as Nellie gathered her things back into her bag. She moved away from the counter, trying to ignore the irritated looks from people in line. She sat on a nearby bench, trying to process what had happened. How could she forget something so crucial? She, who had always been so organized, so meticulous. It was as if part of her didn't really want to make that trip. As if it were a sign. She looked at the clock. If she hurried, there would still be time to go back home, grab the passport, and return for the flight. But something inside her hesitated. Maybe she should call Jason, ask him to look for the document and bring it to her. But he was probably busy, in some important meeting, and would hate to be interrupted. With a sigh, Nellie decided to return home. She would get the document and then decide if she still wanted to travel. The taxi stopped in front of the house again. Nellie paid and got out, noticing something strange. The front door, which she was sure she had locked when she left, was just ajar. A shiver ran down her spine. Had she forgotten to lock it? It seemed unlikely. It was such a deep-rooted habit. She approached cautiously, gently pushing the door. The interior of the house was silent, but there was something in the air, a palpable tension that was not there when she left earlier. "Jason?" she called, her voice weaker than she intended. There was no response. She took a few hesitant steps down the hallway, noticing small details out of place. A slightly moved chair, a vase that always sat on the coffee table was now on the floor, intact, as if someone had purposely placed it there. A sense of alarm took hold of Nellie. Something was definitely wrong. She considered leaving the house immediately and calling the police, but what if Jason was upstairs? What if he had come back earlier and was unwell? With her heart racing, she decided to climb the stairs. Each step creaked slightly under her feet, and she tried to be as quiet as possible. Upon reaching the top, she heard muffled voices coming from the master bedroom. Male voices, but none of them seemed to be Jason's. She approached the bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. With extreme care, she peeked through the crack. What she saw made her blood run cold. Jason was sitting in a chair, tied up, blindfolded, with a cut on his temple that was still bleeding. Around him, 4 hooded men were speaking in low voices. One of them was holding what appeared to be a gun. Nellie stepped back, covering her mouth to stifle a scream of horror. Her husband was being held hostage in his own home. The reality of the situation hit her like a punch in the stomach. She needed to get help, but how? He went down the stairs carefully, trying not to make any noise. Every creak of the wood seemed amplified in his ears. He needed a phone. He remembered that he had left his cell phone in the living room before leaving for the airport. He crawled to the sofa where he had last seen the device. It was there, partially hidden among the cushions. With trembling fingers, Nellie dialed the emergency number. "Police, what is your emergency?" The calm voice of the operator sounded like a balm amid the panic. "Please help," Nellie whispered as quietly as possible. "My husband is being held hostage in our house. There are 4 armed men." "Mom, are you in a safe place?" "No, I'm in the living room. They are upstairs." "There is a patrol car near your area," the operator informed after asking for the address. "They are on their way. In the meantime, I need you to hide, keep the phone close and stay quiet." Nellie heard footsteps on the upper floor. They were moving, maybe coming down. "I need to hang up," she whispered, terrified. "They are coming. Keep the line open if you can, Ma'am. Help is on the way." Nellie did not respond. She looked around, desperate for a hiding place. She remembered the closet under the stairs, where they kept coats and umbrellas. It was small, but she could fit inside. She ran there, opened the door and went in, pulling it closed behind her. Inside, there was a small lock that they rarely used. Nellie engaged it, mentally thanking for this small measure of security. Shrunken in the dark closet, Nellie tried to control her breathing. The cell phone was still in her hand, with the call active but on mute. Through the thin wood she could hear footsteps and voices on the floor below. "Was the door really ajar when we arrived?" asked a deep voice. "I'm sure it was," another replied. "Why?" "Something's wrong. Look at these marks on the carpet. It looks like someone entered recently." Nellie's heart was beating so hard that she feared they might hear it. "Let's check the house. We can't have any witnesses." The sound of footsteps approached. Cabinets being opened, curtains pulled aside, doors being kicked open. Nellie tried not to tremble, not to make the slightest noise. The footsteps came near the cupboard under the stairs. The handle turned, but the internal lock held fast. There were 2 loud bangs on the door, and Nellie bit her lip to keep from screaming. "It's locked or jammed," said the voice. Never mind. There's no room in there for anyone to hide, replied another voice, more distant. The footsteps retreated, and Nellie let out a silent sigh of relief. But her momentary comfort was interrupted by the distant sound of approaching sirens. "It's the police!" someone shouted. "We have to get out of here!" "And the hostage?" "Bring him! He's our insurance policy!" There was a rush upstairs. Heavy footsteps were coming down the stairs right above where Nellie was hiding. She could feel the vibrations through the wood. "There's no time! The police are already here!" shouted a third voice. The sound of breaking glass indicated that someone was trying to escape through the back of the house. The sirens were very close now. "Police! Come out with your hands up!" echoed an amplified voice from outside. What followed was a confusion of sounds, shouts, orders, one or two gunshots that seemed to be warnings, running. Nellie remained motionless in her hiding place, praying that Jason was okay. After what seemed like an eternity, but was probably only a few minutes, there was a moment of relative silence. Then, knocks on the closet door. "Police, is there someone inside?" Nellie felt such a huge wave of relief that she almost fainted. With trembling fingers, she unlocked the door and went out, still holding the cell phone. "Thank God," she murmured, finding herself face to face with a police officer. "Are you okay, ma'am?" he asked, visibly concerned. "My husband. Where is my husband?" was all she could say. "He is being attended to by the paramedics. He's injured, but conscious. 2 suspects were detained on the spot. A third was injured trying to jump over the back wall. The 4th managed to escape, but we have street security cameras that will help us identify him." Nellie went outside the house, where an ambulance was already parked. Jason was being placed on a stretcher, with an improvised bandage on his temple. When he saw her, his eyes filled with tears. "Nellie," he murmured, reaching out his hand. She ran to him, holding his hand tightly. I'm here," she repeated like a mantra. "We need to take him to the hospital for tests," one of the paramedics informed. "You can accompany him in the ambulance." Nellie nodded, without letting go of Jason's hand. As the ambulance departed, she looked through the rear window at the house she had almost left behind that morning. Her flight had certainly already departed. Her plan to take a break now seemed so distant, so irrelevant. Instead of the clarity she sought in the distance, she found a deep emptiness, imagining what might have happened if she hadn't forgotten the passport, if she hadn't returned home at that exact moment. She looked at Jason, wounded and vulnerable on the stretcher beside her. Seeing him like this, so defenseless, awakened something inside her. She didn't want distance. She wanted rebuilding. In the hospital, after exams confirmed that there were no serious damages, other than the cut on his temple and some bruises on his wrists and ankles, Jason was placed in a room for 24-hour observation. Nellie sat by the bed, holding his hand as if she feared losing him again. Jason's eyes were tired with deep shadows, but there was a brightness in them that she hadn't seen in a long time. For a few moments they remained silent, just looking at each other. It was a silence filled not with tension like in recent months, but with pent-up emotions, unspoken words, fears and hopes. "I thought I wouldn't see you again," Jason finally spoke, his voice hoarse and low. Nellie felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I almost didn't come back," she confessed. "If I had remembered the passport." Jason squeezed her hand. "But you came back. That's what matters." Nellie took a deep breath, gathering courage. It was time to talk, really talk, about what was happening between them. "Jason, I've been feeling so lost in the past few months," she began, her voice trembling but determined. "It's like we're living parallel lives, under the same roof but completely disconnected." He nodded slowly, not looking away. "I know. I felt the same way, but I didn't know how to fix it. It seemed like every attempt only made things worse." "I felt forgotten," she continued, the words pouring out like a torrent after a heavy rain. "Not just by you, but by myself as well. I lost the sense of who I was, of what I wanted. The routine swallowed us, and the affection, The affection simply disappeared. Jason closed his eyes for a moment, and a solitary tear rolled down his bruised temple. I let work consume me, he admitted. It was easier to dive into the problems there than to face what was happening at home. I knew we were drifting apart, but I didn't realize how much until... His voice faltered. Until today, Nellie completed. He nodded. When those men invaded the house, all I could think about was you. About how I hadn't told you in so long how important you are to me. About how I let us assume that each other knew what we felt without ever really expressing it. Nellie felt a lump in her throat. I was running away, she confessed. Not from you, but from us. From what we've become. I thought distance would give me clarity, but now I realize that what we need is not space, but reconnection. I almost lost you today, Jason said, his voice choked. And it wasn't because of those men. It was because we let our love fall asleep, suffocated by unspoken demands and unmet expectations. Nellie leaned in and gently touched his face, avoiding the bandage. I didn't get lost. I'm here, and I don't want to run away anymore. They fell silent again, but this time it was a silence full of promises. What exactly happened? Nellie finally asked, referring to the invasion. Jason sighed. It was about the project I'm working on. We developed a security system that some people would like to have access to before the launch. They wanted the codes, the passwords. And did you give it to them? He shook his head. No. I said that I didn't have access to everything by myself, that we would need to go to the office. They were discussing what to do when you arrived, or rather, when the police arrived. Nellie felt a mixture of pride and relief. You were brave. I was just trying to buy time, he admitted, thinking of how to get out of that situation. He paused. Which brings us back to our marriage. How do we get out of the situation we got ourselves into? Nellie thought for a moment. Maybe we need new rules, small but meaningful commitments. Like what? Like having dinner together at least 3 times a week without phones or distractions, setting aside time, even if it's just 10 minutes a day, just to talk, taking a walk together on weekends. Jason smiled slightly. Remember when we started dating? How we made a point to send good morning messages, even when we had just seen each other? Nellie smiled too, remembering those small gestures of affection. And how you used to leave post-its with messages around the house for me to find. We could start doing that again, he suggested. Not as an obligation, but as a choice, choosing to show love every day, in little ways. And saying, thank you, and I'm sorry more often, Nellie added. Recognizing each other's efforts, even in the small things. Jason nodded, his eyes shining with renewed hope. I don't want to wait until I'm almost losing you again to appreciate what we have. Nellie leaned in and kissed his lips softly, a gesture they hadn't sincerely shared for months. Welcome back, Jason murmured against her lips. I'm home, she replied, knowing she was referring not just to the physical structure, but to the feeling of belonging they had rediscovered. Outside, through the hospital window, the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. A new day would come tomorrow, and with it, the chance to start over. Not from scratch, but from a place of deeper understanding. Because true love is not the one that never fails, but the one that chooses to rebuild, even after the cracks. And in the end, Nellie realized that she didn't need a passport for the most important journey of her life, the journey back to the heart of the man she loved. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.